November 1st, 2015, Jeff Gordon prevailed to win his final NASCAR Cup race. A surreal moment to experience, but that was nothing compared to the atmosphere in Martinsville, hearing the loud cheer of a near-capacity crowd as the four-time champ celebrated on the front stretch. Just hearing the reaction made it one of NASCAR's greatest moments in the 2010s. Throughout the early 90s into the 2000s, unfortunately, Jeff Gordon was notoriously the most hated driver in the league. He was far familiar with boos, obscure gestures, and even a beer can from time to time. This was rather puzzling considering Gordon never came off as arrogant when he won. You didn't see him brag or gloat about his prized possessions. Jeff Gordon simply put on the helmet, showcased his immense talents, and made his name as one of NASCAR's top drivers. Not to mention he wasn't too controversial behind the wheel. That's as long as you forget Phoenix 2012, which was a pretty cowardice move on his part. He wasn't afraid to use the bumper, but oftentimes he raced the competition smart and clean. It's a question I've wanted to gain more definitive answers to. Furthermore, this is the story of Jeff Gordon's fan reception in NASCAR. Unlike many of NASCAR's youth in the 2010s, Jeff Gordon made an impact almost immediately. His rookie season consisted of crashes and inconsistencies, but he did claim the ROTY award. This was a strong class featuring NASCAR champions Bobby Labonte and Todd Bodine. In 1994, his sophomore campaign, Gordon won 2 crown jewels, the Charlotte 600 and the Brickyard 400. He led a lot more laps and finished 8th in the season point standings. To emerge as a top driver in NASCAR, howbeit that meant going door to door with the Intimidator. Many argue Dale Earnhardt was, and still is today, the textbook definition of stock car racing. A tough Southern driver who came from nothing, worked hard, and became a top NASCAR Cup racer. Without a doubt, his car and style on the racetrack matched up with his personality. The North Carolina resident was coming off of 4 championships in 5 seasons. He was definitely a driver you didn't want to mess with. Yet, Jeff Gordon, a hefty and flashy 23-year-old, would not be intimidated. The Rainbow Warrior went into Atlanta, Rockingham, and Darlington, beating Earnhardt head-to-head on the pavement. Ultimately, it was Dale Earnhardt celebrating during the season-ending Atlanta 500 as the race winner. With a win in New Hampshire, Gordon captured the points lead mid-season and never looked back. His 1995 granted him 7 victories, but most importantly, his first NASCAR Cup championship. Even if his career went haywire from this point, he could always say he beat Dale Earnhardt to win a championship. That's a pretty damn good accomplishment if you ask me. With competing on the racetrack and on the point sheet, it created a rivalry. Now, it was more of a friendly rivalry between the two drivers. Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon themselves rarely had dust-ups on the track and were good friends off of it. In fact, at one point their respective crew chiefs Andy Petree and Ray Evernham even shared notes with each other. From the fans' perspective, this was a deeply divided rivalry. There was no middle ground between the two. You either went for Jeff Gordon's colorful, flashy image or the tough, blue-collar persona of Dale Earnhardt. While Gordon won a lot of mainstream viewers, a majority of NASCAR's core fan base leaned towards Earnhardt. Following that title, he continued to win some more. From 1996 to 1998, he won 33 of the 96 races. In baseball terms, he'd have a .343 win average, an insane amount considering he's just one driver in a 43-car field. That era resulted in 2 championships, and had he been a tad more consistent, he could have rattled off 4 in a row. Because of the dominance, Jeff Gordon wore the black hat in the late 1990s, early 2000s. Not only that, but he was doing it in his 20s. Typically, experience was seen as the key to success in championships. It was rare for youth to compete against the Bill Elliott's and Ricky Rudds of the series, let alone beat them. That all changed as Jeff Gordon broke out as a NASCAR superstar. NASCAR fans would watch as their favorite drivers who've been competing for decades come up short to the 24. Sterling Marlin, a career year in 1995, was no match for the Rainbow Warrior. Mark Martin, meanwhile, put up elite numbers in 97 and 98. 11 wins over 2,500 laps led in his number 6 Valvoline Ford. It's his time considering so many close but no cigar seasons for the driver hailing from Batesville, Arkansas. Yet, it was that number 24 DuPont Chevrolet that disappointed Mark's fanbase both seasons. With that refuse to lose attitude, Jeff Gordon, Ray Evernham and crew were equivalent to the New England Patriots. Until of course, protege Jimmy Johnson and Chad Knaus absolutely dominated the late 2000s, early 2010s. Coupling all these factors led to Jeff Gordon becoming a polarizing driver.
Of 1998 and 37th career victory.
The crowd. You know, they got to have somebody to love, and they got to have somebody to boo for, and they got Gordon to boo for tonight. At least some of them did.
One lap too soon, and he should have drove right up in front of Gordon going down into 1. He should have made him lift.
As you can tell, he was revered at tracks like Atlanta, Charlotte, and Darlington. There were even some rumors created about Gordon attempting to plague his performance on the track. Jeff Gordon, just a simple kid excelling on the track, became the most hated driver of the 1990s. Even as Dale Sr. passed on, Gordon continued to win races and championships. That continued success didn't win him many fans behind the catch fence, albeit he would receive cheers from the crowd now and then.
Against the wall and hit Tony Stewart with the left front, so he's got both sides of the DuPont Chevrolet. And he's headed down pit road, even though pit road was not open, they had no call.
And they're stacking up behind him. Yep. There's Ricky Rudd hard in the wall.
42. 21 car got heavy damage.
And they're still wrecking Allmendinger, Robbie Gordon.
Boy, I don't feel good about Jeff Gordon at all. That was a hard nose-in lick right there.
The applause for Jeff Gordon wrecking couldn't compare to one location, Talladega, Alabama. The Talladega Superspeedway was one of Dale Sr.'s playgrounds, with son Dale Jr. following his winning heritage. He rattled off 4 victories in a row, further strengthening the name Earnhardt Country. DEI and Hendrick Motorsports were the best cars at plate tracks, which meant the Flame DuPont Chevrolet commonly traded paint with the red Budweiser Chevrolet. During the 2004 Aaron's 499, things steered to another direction. After a Brian Vickers spin with 4 to go, the caution flag was brought out. Dale Jr. had taken the lead, but according to the last scoring loop, Jeff Gordon was deemed the leader. In an era before the green-white checkered rule, the race wound down to the finish. Jeff Gordon broke DEI's plate win streak, winning his first race of 2004. Honestly, Dale Jr. fans were justified in their frustrations. It was undoubtedly a questionable call, and the race should have been able to restart. Unfortunately, a lot of anger was lashed out on the player in this flawed game. Doing his burnout, the 24 Pepsi machine was pelted with aluminum cans alike. To make matters worse, after the race, Gordon had to go to a suite as the race winner. That meant he had to walk through the grandstands to get to that destination. 3 years later, Jeff Gordon won his 5th race at the Superspeedway. This wasn't just any Talladega win, howbeit. In front of thousands of Earnhardt fans, Gordon won his 77th career Cup race. That broke a tie with Dale Sr. on NASCAR's all-time wins list. The date was also April 29th, which just happened to be the Intimidator's 56th birthday. Once again, hundreds of Budweiser and Miller cans rained down from the Talladega grandstands. It seemed the Jeff Gordon distaste wouldn't eradicate for some time. Surprisingly, the turning point seemingly came 6 months later. In the midst of a championship battle, the 2007 UAW Ford 500 was a critical race. Four-time spent a majority of the race in the back, longing to avoid a catastrophic blow to his drive for 5. As the trophy was on the line, the 24 marched up to the lead pack. The Hendrick Motorsports trio raced to the front with teammate Jimmy Johnson leading the way. In terms of the championship, although it was a great day as an owner, it would be doomful as a driver. They were teammates on the track, but rivals on the point sheet. A win by Jeff Gordon could mean the difference between victory and defeat. On that final lap, the Flame Warrior would make a daring move for the top position, catching the draft of Tony Stewart, the 24 past the 48 to win and exit with the season points lead. The flashy vengeance style of Jeff Gordon rekindled on that October afternoon, creating a great finish for the spectators. Unlike prior Dega races, there wasn't a beer storm after the checkered flag. In fact, you could hear some loud cheers on the ESPN broadcast. Finally, it seemed as Talladega was respecting the talents of Jeff Gordon and how he made NASCAR fun to watch. In 2008, 2 critical events further swung the pendulum in Gordon's favor. The first, Gordon had a regressive season. No wins for the first time since 1993. This began a stretch of 3 seasons with just a lone victory in 2009. Meanwhile, teammate and protege Jimmy Johnson was on a streak of 5 titles in a row. No longer was Jeff Gordon a flashy young driver breaking the hearts of fan bases. On a 7-year championship drought, he was becoming like the Mark Martins and Ricky Rudds before him. This was the first time in his career that Jeff Gordon was showing age. The biggest thing to come from 2008 was Dale Jr. joining Hendrick Motorsports. As a part owner of HMS, Jeff Gordon at first was hesitant about Jr. joining the organization, mainly because the thought of Dale Jr. and Jeff Gordon as teammates was troubling to some fans. Including the boatloads of money from the sponsorship deal and junior merch, it was a great long-term move for Gordon's reputation. Being teammates with the sport's most popular driver connected Gordon to those Earnhardt fans that despised him. Now, I highly doubt Junior Nation bought the Flame gear and adorned any 24 merch. Not to mention, many still disliked him for the first few years. Yet, Jeff Gordon wasn't public enemy number 1. After all, Junior might have never raced at HMS without Gordon's help. In fact, Junior Nation found a new antagonist that season in Kyle Busch. We all know what happened on that spring evening in Richmond. Junior, riding a 71 race winless streak, was spun off the nose of the number 18 pedigree Toyota. The fourth-year Vegas driver instantly became an enemy of Dale Jr.'s faithful. Keeping into account he was more brash in his youth than Gordon ever was. As his career wound down, the respect for driver 24 strengthened with each passing year. Of course, you had victories such as Indianapolis. The Yard of Bricks as well as Sonoma were usually the few circuits Gordon would call home. Many likely saw him race midgets, which he succeeded at in the early 1990s. Then you had Texas 2014. In the past, where fans would have roared as Gordon cut a tire, they were egging him to go after Brad Keselowski. After the Texas-sized brawl, Jeff Gordon was the one universally supported in this altercation. By his farewell season, Jeff Gordon wasn't anywhere close to the young kid of the 1990s. He was the crafty veteran, much like Dale Earnhardt was as Gordon emerged onto the scene. For one, his paint schemes carried a different look. Back in the 90s, early 2000s, it would have been obscure for Gordon to drive a dark-colored car. Yet in 2015, his primary paint schemes consisted of black, red, and silver. I would say this was one of the more interesting paint scheme progressions in recent NASCAR memory. Meanwhile, he was a driver you didn't want to mess with. After all, he was the most accomplished and longest tenured driver in the field. His driving style still differed from Earnhardt, but his image was semi-relatable. And with one last ride, much like they did with Dale Sr. before him, the fans showed their appreciation.
What a season this is starting off as for Jeff Gordon.
Feels good, let's see. Yeah, you got it. Good job, guys.
Yep. Big cheer from the crowd. The last race at Talladega Superspeedway. Amazing, you can hear the near 60,000 people over the roar of 43 engines, but you could hear it there when Jeff Gordon took the lead.
In the end, I understand why Jeff Gordon was revered by most NASCAR fans. He was a young, deferring driver compared to the traditional stock car racers. He challenged Dale Earnhardt's reign in the 90s. He didn't have much of a personality because he rarely suffered defeat. He was the bad guy, the black hat, constantly besting the beloved veterans of the sport. Yet Jeff Gordon became a driver that constantly bested the veterans to, well, one of the veterans. As he aged as a driver and a person, they came around to appreciate his driving style and his success after 23 years of cup racing. Regardless of whether the fans loathed him or loved him, he was a driver that brought out emotion. We could certainly use more NASCAR drivers today that evoke that same passion. So anyways, this is NRF signing out, and just remember, life's a beach and then you drive.